Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a genuinely powerful sermon focused on the jurisprudence of migration to Allah Almighty. We're going to dive deep into a pivotal moment in history, the Prophet Muhammad's migration, the intense, absolute struggles that provoked it, and what this ancient event actually means for you and me today. So, let's jump right in and look at why this migration had to happen in the first place.
Looking at the source material, it's crystal clear this wasn't just some casual move. For a full decade after the initial call to Islam, the Muslims in Mecca faced a reality that is honestly hard for us to even fathom today. We are talking about extreme, unbearable persecution. The believers were starved, they were physically tortured, and entirely blocked from basic resources. They were pleading with God for a way out of a city where the oppressors were just relentless. And the hostile forces, they were constantly plotting, which ultimately culminated in plans to either imprison, expel, or outright assassinate the Prophet himself. It was, quite literally, a situation of life and death.
If you trace the history, you'll see this rapid escalation of hostility from the Quraysh over those early years. By year 10, the persecution had hit its absolute peak. But here's the thing. The departure wasn't a spontaneous, chaotic retreat. It was entirely tied to divine timing. It wasn't until the 13th year that divine revelation explicitly granted permission to migrate to Medina, where the local supporters, known as the Ansar, had already pledged their allegiance. That divine green light was the ultimate catalyst for packing up and leaving.
Okay, what's absolutely striking here is the sheer tactical brilliance of the escape plan. Like I said, this wasn't a chaotic sprint. It was deeply, deeply calculated. The Prophet fled under the cover of night alongside his closest companion, Abu Bakr. And get this incredible detail from the text. They hired Abdullah bin Urayqit to guide them through the treacherous desert. Now, Abdullah was a non-Muslim, yet the Prophet trusted him with his very life simply because he was the best guide available. And to throw off their pursuers, they didn't head straight for Medina. Instead, they hid out in the cave of Thar for 3 agonizing days.
So picture this. This brings us to a breathtaking climax inside that cave. The Meccan trackers had literally followed their footprints right to the mouth of the cave. Abu Bakr, looking at the feet of the assassins just inches away, was utterly terrified. He whispered that if any of them just looked down, they'd be spotted for sure. But the Prophet's response is immortalized in this amazing quote. What do you think of 2? Allah is their 3rd. It's such a profound contrast, right? You have Abu Bakr's very human, terrifying realism up against the Prophet's unwavering, absolute faith. God concealed them, and the trackers just turned away. Moving right along, that brings us to their arrival in Medina and this concept of unprecedented brotherhood. When the Prophet finally made it to Medina, the crowd was absolutely ecstatic. Everyone wanted the immense honor of hosting him. People were literally grabbing the reins of his camel, begging him to stay at their homes. But the Prophet handled this potentially delicate social situation brilliantly. He told the crowds, "Leave her, for she is commanded." He basically allowed his camel to be divinely guided through the throngs of people. Wherever that camel finally knelt down, that exact, undisputed spot would become the site for the new mosque. It was literally the perfect way to make a choice without showing any favoritism. Once he was settled, it was time to build a new society from the ground up. And those foundational steps began immediately. First, he established the Quba Mosque, built entirely on a foundation of piety. Second, the Prophet's Mosque was constructed. And he didn't just stand back and supervise. He passionately labored right alongside his companions, physically carrying the heavy mud bricks himself. And third, he instituted a formal pact of brotherhood among 90 men, literally pairing up the Meccan immigrants with the Medinan locals. You really see this dynamic play out beautifully between 2 groups. On one side, you have the Ansar, the Medinan hosts, who showed this astonishing, selfless generosity. They literally offered half of all their wealth, their homes, and split their resources right down the middle for their new brothers. On the flip side, you have the Muhajirun, the Meccan immigrants, who demonstrated such inspiring dignity and self-reliance. They largely refused the free charity, instead simply asking, "Just point me to the market." They wanted to work and earn their keep. Talk about immense character on both sides of this brotherhood. Now, our source material highlights a couple of amazing distinctions regarding 2 specific companions during this whole event. Abu Bakr was the uniquely chosen companion for the journey. While plenty of companions shared great traits, Abu Bakr's honor of being the second of 2 in that cave is a distinction literally nobody else shares. Then there's Ali bin Abi Talib, a young man who showed unimaginable courage. He slept in the Prophet's bed on the night of the escape, fully expecting to wake up facing the blades of the assassins. But here's the kicker. Ali's mission in that bed wasn't just to act as a decoy. He was there to fulfill the trusts of the enemy. The source points out a profound, almost unbelievable irony here.
The Meccans were actively trying to murder the Prophet, yet they still trusted him entirely with their valuables. They kept their wealth and deposits with him because of his absolute honesty. So despite being forced out of his homeland, the Prophet left Ali behind specifically to return every single piece of wealth back to the very people trying to kill him. It's a staggering lesson in maintaining your integrity, even with your worst enemies. So let's nail down a critical definition here. The Hijrah was not a tourist escape. It definitely wasn't some economic migration in pursuit of better weather, fertile lands, or worldly wealth. The source is crystal clear. This was a divine command and the ultimate test of faith. These believers sacrificed their established homes, their properties, and their extended families, literally walking into a complete unknown simply to protect their ability to worship freely.
All right, let's move into the next phase here, the continuous spiritual migration. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, okay, what does this ancient history actually mean for me right now? Well, the Prophet famously declared, no migration after the conquest, but jihad and intention. Let's unpack that for a second. He meant that the geographical move to Medina as a strict religious obligation ended forever with the conquest of Mecca. You can no longer earn the specific reward of that physical journey. However, the doors to that exact same immense spiritual reward remain wide open through your internal struggle, your jihad, and your pure intentions today. So, what does this ongoing migration look like in practice for us? It means migrating from polytheism to pure monotheism, from doing things just to show off to doing them with sincere, quiet intention. It's migrating from sins to obedience, from surrounding yourself with bad company to seeking out good, uplifting friends. And incredibly practically, it's migrating from laziness and wasting time to diligence and active participation in good deeds. This is the daily migration we are all actively called to make. If you've ever felt bummed out that you missed out on this massive historical event, the source offers a highly comforting and really empowering statement. The Prophet redefined the concept entirely when he said, the muhajir, the migrant, is the one who abandons what Allah has forbidden. By simply leaving behind bad habits, toxic environments, and actions that displease God, you are stepping right into the shoes of those original migrants. You are actively participating in the Hijrah right now. And that essentially wraps up our explainer, but I want to leave you with a really vital question. The physical migration across the desert sands has ended, but what will you migrate from today? Which bad habit, negative influence, or distraction are you going to leave behind right now to move closer to your own spiritual Medina? Take a moment to really think about that and begin your personal migration today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning, keep growing, and keep migrating towards the good.